Right. Hello,
Okay. Right,
everybody.
cool.
See, Phil missed it again. Hello, everybody.
Oh dear. I'm up.
Oh, so
Should we start again? Let's start
every
again.
so welcome to the Pellet and Target. Just the two of us this week, and our special guest, Shaun Shore, who is let me get this right, you're the chairman of the Midland Field Target Association and the
That's correct, yep.
secretary of the British Field Target Association.
Correct, yep.
Yeah, got that right. That's the first thing I got right in about 3 weeks.
Good start, Keith. Good start. Yeah.
It is, yeah.
Right, so Sean's here today to sort of like help us decipher field target,
Especially for me.
especially for Phil. I mean, I'm lucky. I've done a bit of it. I do HFT and FT, right? So I know a bit. But the way we're going to work it, Sean, is that imagine that we're a pair of idiots, mainly because we are, and we're just going to ask like straightforward questions about field target. Just letting us know. Like my first question I've got here: what is field target?
Well, that's probably a long answer to that one, but the short one would be it is a target sport outdoors for targets ranging from 10 yards to 55 yards. I suppose what defines the sport that the out person looking in is the big scopes and the fancy rifles. The big scopes are to make accurate range finding, and the skill of the comp really is to be able to range find well, have a steady aim, and to read the wind. I think it's not undifferent to hunter field target or any other outdoor sport in that respect. But I think where it's different is those extra 10 yards, which, as you know from your own experience there, it's the wind that's the problem. Yeah,
Yeah.
whereas perhaps as I say HFT, I've only done it a dozen or so times. It's the ranging that's difficult. But that hopefully that you've solved that problem with your scope. But it's the wind reading that makes the difference really.
Okay, cool. So what do you think then? Somebody is watching our watcher, whoever he is.
Yeah.
What would be the minimum bit of kit then that somebody would need to go and have a go at field target?
Well, I'm glad I'm allowed to answer that one because the answer is you can come with whatever you've got. We have a graded system which allows people to enter the competition with any rifle and any scope. So if you do come along and you'll find that it's perhaps difficult because you haven't got that quick kit, you'll certainly be learning as you go along. And what you'd see is people will be very, very helpful in helping you make decisions about what you need and giving you a go with their kit. So many people start shooting a rifle with a sporter stock and a 3-9 scope because they get sold with it. Would that function? Overwhelmingly, yes. You wouldn't be particularly successful, but you'd certainly still be engaged. And what you would do is you'd come in at C grade, and as you got better and as your equipment got better, you'd move up the grade system. So it's a bit like golf handicapping, really. But it's a rifle, a scope, and alluding to your earlier point, something comfy to sit on.
Unless you're using sticks, of course.
Yes, sticks, of course, is becoming quite the sort of fashion of the moment. It's great to see so many people engage, particularly through Throckmorton in the Midlands. And, I'd love to see that extend to the national scene. I really would. But we need, if the message you can take back to the people who shoot sticks that don't attend those events is start attending them, because that will bring the BFTA interest up, really.
Yeah. So you mentioned a minute ago about like the type of rifle that you have. So if you had like let's call it an entry level rifle, you couldn't, even if could you be in the higher bands even if you've got that rifle? Is it dependent on rifle and skill, or just skill, or how does it work?
No, any rifle will do. What you tend to find is that people move away from unregulated rifles so they get that consistency of shot. But you don't have to go very far back to find the Air Arms S400, a non-regulated rifle, doing very well in national and international competitions. People still use them. It's about learning that one and learning, what pressure it works with best. But one of the reasons that isn't so seen so much is because with the scopes getting so big, it tends to become a bit top heavy. So people then tend to go for the more dedicated FT stock. There's another side to it that says that when you go to an event, if you see all the good guys and good girls using this level kit, perhaps you're attracted to it. But there's certainly no requirement for it. And if I would encourage anybody wanting to try FT to do not to buy anything, come with what they've got, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, I think that the graded, which I've alluded to, the grading makes that difference. It gives you an entry point and gives you a target to be making progress across the seasons. So, for example, we have a 7-round GP series, and that's for people of all abilities. The double A is our top class, then A, B, and C. And then you've got the open class and you've got piston class. So there's something for everyone. And of course, at the moment, the sticks would compete within open class. And we would like to see it develop if there were enough stick shooters that they could have a class of their own. So, you know, it's all encompassing in that respect. But equipment, I think there's a bit of a fallacy about equipment level. And skill plays a great deal. And I could promise you that if we took, let's say, one of the top field target shooters, they do very well with very limited kit, because they you know, it's a bit like, I suppose, when you go to a target, even though you range find it, that amount of experience gives you, you know, by eye, a very good idea of how far it is, and so you use that scope to reinforce that. But you know, I've seen people like Andy Calpin, for example, go around a course with a very limited piece of kit and beat me, which isn't hard.
Yeah. You just said about GPs and that. So what's the difference with the GP then?
Well, to outline what you know, you've been competing in the Midlands for 2 seasons now, and you're into your 3rd season. So over the winter period, the BFTA, which is made up of 9 regions of the country, we all go back to our regions for the winter and compete amongst ourselves. And then in the summer, kicking off, generally at the end of March, start of April, we have the BFTA Championships and the interregional competition, which is an individual competition and then a team competition. And then that's followed by the GP series, which is 7 rounds. Sometimes it can be more, but this year's 7 rounds. And it's the best 4 scoring rounds of those 7 going to the end of season prizes. And for example, the top 5 in double A will then receive prizes, the top 10 in A, the top 10 in B. And the reason the numbers are different is because it reflects the amount of competitors. If, for example, when we saw Throckmorton as an example, GP1, we saw that, and I think we had a good outing of stick shooters. We'd need that sort of number at every round, and that would make it a tremendous competition. When I say every round, of course, it only 4 from 7 have to score. You can compete in 7 or you can compete in 4. We follow that with the BFTA Showdown, which is a qualification event, which probably take me half an hour to explain. But then the Masters, which is an event you'd be very welcome at, Keith, because that's at 2 times 30. Great day out where you shoot 30 in the morning, have some lunch, go out and do another 30. And then we culminate with the British Open, which this year is in the Isle of Wight, which is a 2-day, 50 targets a day event, which is only its 3rd year, but before that it used to be called the BFTA Europeans. We changed that because, of course, there's now an actual Europeans that moves around Europe. So all those events are open to anybody to enter, as long as they have a BFTA card.
Huh? So,
and you mentioned a card there.
Yeah.
How do you get a card? What do you have to do?
Well, you have to be a member of a club that's affiliated to the region. So if I break that down into, Keith's a member of Throckmorton. Throckmorton's a member of the MFTA. That's the Midlands Field Target Association. The Midland Field Target Association is a member of the British Field Target Association, and that's the sort of hierarchy of that. Keith being a member of Throckmorton, when it comes to get the cards, Throckmorton he'll either pay Throckmorton the £5 to get the card, or it will come part of his own registration fee to Throckmorton. So my club, for example, which is Harriers, that comes in part of your membership. But if, for example, you were a new person, to say you were at Throckmorton but didn't have a BFTA card, the secretary of the club will apply for it for you. It's £5, and it allows you to enter any of the BFTA events. I've just got to say that there are two that you can't enter unless you qualify, but all the others you can.
But you don't have to have a BFT to actually have a go, though. BFTA
Yes,
card.
you do. You do in BFTA events. You don't have
Yeah.
to in Midland events.
Yeah, right.
But you. So if you want to enter BFTA, you have to have that 5-figure number.
And what happens is, I'm not going to name names, but if certain people keep leaving it in the car, you don't get your card for about 2 months.
That's not the worry. The worry is that you're registered. So there's a database, and if you're on that database, that's fine. Yeah,
it's definitely on a database somewhere.
Yeah.
I haven't told the neighbours.
All right. Okay. So it's a little bit. I want to say a little bit more structured, maybe, than HFT, or there's a little bit more hoop jumping through.
I think its structure comes from it's been around for so long, and the structure, if I'm honest, is a bit archaic because it's a structure that precedes the internet, really, and so everything is a little slow moving, shall we say, because you as a shooter don't become an individual member of the BFTA. Your region is a member of the BFTA, and that makes it easier to organise and administer. But I think that there's a lot of insurance around this. For example, all clubs have to be insured, and that has to be checked to make your viable membership. So I think the structure is a necessary one. I don't quite know how HFT works per se, because it doesn't seem to have a collection of members. It seems to have a collection of shooters. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think you don't have to be signed up to be a member of a club. They only use club scores really in like National League events, but then it's only people who've registered as part of the club. But anybody can shoot it. There's no set registration as such.
Mm-hmm. So that little hoop fill, as you say, I think for us in terms of our history is a necessary one, for just to make sure that the person who's come along to shoot is at least gone through the club's probation, shall we say, so that we know that somebody's coming to our event who is safe, really, And they've gone through, like, we hope that clubs won't just let people shoot. They'll first of all align them with another member to check everything, make sure they know all the safety procedures. So when you get out into the national, really, it's just a competition. It's not really a training environment for safety. It's a training environment for your shooting, really.
You alluded to it earlier about the grades AA, A, B, C, and Open.
Mm-hmm.
Just to explain to people who don't really understand it, correct me if I'm wrong here. So essentially, it's like a league system, right? And like a golf handicap system almost. So that C grade, everybody shoots together, but you're directly shooting against all the others in the same grade as you. And
yes, that's right. Yeah.
So if you win that grade, do you automatically go up to the next grade, or how does that work?
No. The grade is based on the percentage of you shoot. So we work on something called a rolling 12, right? And let's just say you've got your 12 shoots in, and from that we take a percentage, and that percentage will put you into one of the grades. This is off the top of my head. If it was a national thing, if you were at 87% and above with those 12, you'd be in AA. If you were at 77% but less than 87, you'd be at A. And if you were at above 60 but less than 77, you'd be in B. And if you were less than 60, you'd be in C. And you would maintain that grade until your percentage increased you into the next one. Or, as may be, you might even drop a grade, because you can imagine maintaining the AA grade, for example, is really quite hard. So by winning the grade, you would hope that your scores would advance you, but certainly in A grade, that might not be the case. So it's not grade specific, it's percentage specific. So each time you enter a BFTA event, you'll score a registered score, and that will be used to calculate. You need at least 3, and then you'll get your first grade.
Do you ever get any cowboys who accidentally drop a load of points in because they're getting a bit close?
Well, there's lots of talk about that, but actually evidence to it is difficult. But there's many who think of ways that could be avoided. But personally, I've only ever heard of it once, and that person was silly enough to say it out loud. Really. So if that's what you're thinking, best keep it to yourself, I think, because that would be like the wrong side of sportsmanship, I think.
Absolutely.
So, absolutely.
It's like the bandits in golf, isn't it? Yeah.
So Keith, what grade are you? What are you in?
Well, there's a couple of areas now that have regions even that actually have a 6th grade. Midland is one of them, which is brilliant. So, and when I shoot at when I've shot a GP and I shot at the weekend at it was almost like a national competition. And that one, because it wasn't a 6th grade, I had to shoot the open grade. I think the open, essentially, you can shoot it any way you like. I think, isn't that right, Shaun? You don't have to do standards and supported as kneelers.
No, you can do it any way that you want. I think a bit of confusion exists because we use the term open, and if you look at HFT, open means it's the open contest for everyone. But it's a long story, and I won't go into it. But the open is about open to anybody. So if somebody was to say to you, it's there for people with, let's just say, physical, I wouldn't say disabilities, but discomfort, say, for example, kneeling being the problem, it's not for those, it's for anybody who wants to do it. So, but in that sense, it would be unsupported. So bringing in the sticks, that's why we'd like to see the sticks, if there are enough people, be a separate class, because obviously that's supported. I don't think there's an argument to say which is easier, which is harder, but it's actually just trying to make but just tried to make it a level playing field for everyone, because one of the reasons we can't move to sticks class at the moment is because we allowed it from 2024 people to shoot open in sticks, and nobody shot anything. Now that might be because they didn't know, and I think that I got to say Simon Francis did a great job in the Midlands of bringing it to the attention of both the people who shot sticks and the people in field target, and thankfully the union's been a good one. But I'd really love to see that go national, and the reason being is that the competitions, all of the competitions in open, have prizes, and you need a competitive element to make that worthwhile, because what we don't want is what we still sometimes get, is that when there's 3 competitors in a class and there's 3 prizes, and the idea of the graded or the different classes is to maintain competition, really. So so again, send the message to people who shoot off sticks to say, get out there, look at the national calendar, and you're welcome.
I mean, I was quite happy shooting open, to be honest. I shot against a couple of shooters who had been off for a little while, who were coming back in, who were pretty much top shooters anyway, who they hammered it. But I was 4th in the open, which I was really pleased with, to be honest.
Yeah, Natalie wasn't one of those?
Yeah, she was. Yeah.
She had a tremendous shoot on Sunday.
Fantastic shooting.
Yeah. But you see, when you say that, what we don't have, again, is sufficient data to compare how stick shooters might do in the open. Because let's just say that you came 4th. If we found that we had enough data to say people shooting sticks are not scoring as high as people who are shooting without them, then that wouldn't seem fair to me. But of course, with the lack of data, so the more people we can get shooting, then the information is to say there's the reason that sticks class ought to be on its own.
Brilliant.
There's a lot of support for that, but at the moment there's not a lot of. There's a lot of support for the idea, but at the moment not insufficient shooters.
So I think HFT really pushed sticks quite hard, I think, initially, which is why I think the biggest take up is in HFT. I mean, I personally, when I speak to other stick shooters, I do say, "Oh, have you tried FT?" Because it's a different game. Yeah. But I'll spread the word with the HFT Worlds in September. There's 52, I think it is, stick shooters shooting at it, which is mad.
That's incredible, yeah.
So I'll spread the word there and say, yeah, come and try FT.
Yeah, well, you've seen how the sticks class, which is separate in the Midlands, has really been successful. So replicating that nationally. When we first started the open class, it had a very low take up, but it was a necessary class to allow accessibility. So, which of course the sticks may or may not be considered in that way. But that has grown now to be a very successful part of FT, and I can't see why sticks couldn't do the same.
Yeah. So do you take, when you're setting the Midland courses, I know not so much in the nationals, do you do the same with HF as how they do in HFT, where you look at the pegs and you look to see if it's a viable shooting position for stick shooters? There's no overhanging branches coming down over the kills and all that sort of stuff.
Well, there isn't any reason to do that, Keith, because tell you for why is because some years ago that we changed the rules on kneeling to say that if you want, you can do kneeling standing. So because we have the rules say you've got to be able to do any of the lanes from any of those three positions. So you've got to look and say, can this person take it from the standing position? So not only the kneeling lane, I don't suppose anybody is going to take other, lanes from the standing, but they can, and that's one of the rules. You find that right up to the world's level, that it's got to be visible by all three. In fact, they go a bit further and say prone as well, which can be problematic because, I don't think I've ever seen anybody shoot prone. But we do have a prone style. It's rather different from HFT because you have to support yourself only on your elbows, which obviously has no peg. And that would have some implications, I think, for design of courses. But certainly, if there's a problem with an overhanging branch, then it just gets taken down. Yeah. Ecologically sound, of course.
Of course.
Okay. I didn't realise that. I didn't realise that it was. I thought it was very similar, just the distances were different. So, learned something new today.
Yeah, but yeah. Do you shoot HFT a lot, Phil? Do you?
Yeah. In fact, that's all I shoot really. Keith's dying to say some comment about him beating me all the time, but
I think that the thing you'd notice when you come to FT is the lack of reducers, which because I know that I remember being a HFT shooter some years ago, and we set a course out at Millride, and what we'd done was actually set an FT course to the lengths of HFT, and everybody was finding it really easy because we'd used so many 40mm kills. And I think it's rare to see one at all now, isn't it, in HFT?
No, even 35 is as big as we're going now.
Yeah, so as that sport has developed, I mean, I've done, I think, 6 world HFTs, and people look, I think, at the distance of the targets. They don't realise how difficult it is to range those targets, and particularly when they use such small kills. So if you wanted a day off from looking at small kills, you could come and have a go at an FT course, because the majority is 40mm kills. And of course, when you get the wind beyond 40 yards, you need 40mm really, because that's the key to the game.
I think no, go carry on.
So one of the big things I've noticed is that people sort of go, "Oh, what's easier, HFT or FT?" They're different ballparks. So it's because HFT, we've got smaller kill sizes but shorter distance, which makes it more and no range finding, which makes it quite hard that way. But FT, yes, they've got bigger kills, but the distances are, generally speaking, they're all sort of like 40 yards plus. Not all of them, but a lot of the targets are 40 yards plus, which that then, like you say, that with the wind and the environmental factors kicking in there, that makes it a lot harder.
I would agree. I mean, I'm limited in experiences of HFT, but I find that in the HFT, the difficulty is ranging the target. In FT, the difficulty is wind. Both of them require you to be very steady and have a good trigger technique. But I would agree with you that there's a number of times when they've attempted to collaborate a competition, but it's very hard because, what do you do? Do you then extend the range to 55, or do you start bringing in? You see, for example, if you had an 18-yard, maybe not 18 yards, let's go for 14-yard, 15 mil kill, that becomes difficult in HFT to actually say, well, is it, 12, is it 15? But of course, if you've got a scope that tells you exactly that it's 14, that just becomes a problem of steadiness. So the range has been taken out of the problem. As you'll know, if you get the ranges in your zenith from, say, 20 to sort of 35 yards, you just can aim at them. In the range is lower than that I find that the range finding is very difficult in HFT. And where it's difficult in FT is reading the wind, but certainly also keeping a steady shot. But that's the same for both.
Yeah, there was one target on the near the Plinking range at Throckmorton, right in the corner. I think it was 55 yards. I think it was after was it GP1 you said earlier, Throckmorton this year. So I had a go at that on sticks. I've only got a 10 times scope, so there was no playing around with the scope or anything. I must have taken 12, 15 shots at it. I just had no idea where I was sitting. I just never knocked it over. So it was hard. I'll have to come along and do it.
6, was it?
Could be,
yeah. You do it. Yeah. I think one of the things that there you see when you have that, if you're not seeing it, generally you're going low.
Okay.
And of course, when you're going low, you just join the pile. So come along and have a go, and
Sure.
start twiddling those knobs, shall we say?
You were saying about rangefinders, and a few people ranging in on twiddling the hand of ranging. I've heard mentioned a few times now about potentially laser rangefinders being brought into FT to try to bring people in. Does that sound something that's likely to happen? Something that's being considered? Something that's been thrown out?
I said earlier that BFTA has the members of the regions of the country. If one of them proposes that for an inclusion, say the Midlands put a proposal forward to say laser rangefinders could be used, then it's up to the other members of that committee, which are all the regions. I'm not a region, I'm the secretary. The chairman and the treasurer don't get votes. It's just the people who represent the shooters get the vote, and they would either vote it in or they'd not. Now, saying that, about 12 months ago, there was a big thread on it on shooting the breeze. And I thought, will a proposal come from that? In fact, we discussed it, I can remember now, at the June meeting last year, to say, would we see a proposal about it? Nothing come forward. Whilst I'm the secretary, and I mentioned some of the other people who form the committee, it's got to come from the shooting fraternity to say this is what they want to see a change. And at the moment, nobody's put that forward. I'd be interested to see what comes from that. Yeah.
I think it'd be quite interesting how people view that. So I've tended to see or think, again, I don't know, that FT is a bit more traditional.
Right.
FT shooters a bit more traditionalist, because I've noticed that there's a few HFT shooters that have tried FT, but it doesn't seem to go very much the other way around. So FT shooters trying HFT. Yeah.
No, you would know. I mean, one of the problems that occurred for that was that unfortunately, the last few years we've clashed on events, because when the HFT Worlds was at Kelmarsh, you remember that there we used to get a few attend there, but then unfortunately because Kelmarsh finished, we were then supposed to at one point have a combined event at Western Park, but unfortunately Western Park failed. if the events clash, HFT are going to go to their event, aren't they? Field Target to theirs. But I mean, I know a few, but not that many. And I think it's a bit like playing tennis and squash, though, is that if you really want to be good at one of them, you've got to stick at it. I think personally, having an air rifle is just good fun, but I'm not at the upper echelon of that competition, and I don't think people who are really good would be swapping between the two, really.
I think I've asked about 98%
one can
of the
help the
questions
other?
there.
Yeah. Do you think one discipline could help the other? For example, if you were a good HFT shooter, do you think you may struggle with FT, or you might do better than, say, someone coming into it that had never shot before? Or
I think if you've got yourself a good trigger technique, I think where you find FT tricky would be that you haven't got a peg, so you support it yourself, and that can take some time to get a technique. And if you've not seen it before, it's easy to concentrate on the rifle when you're watching people. I would say if you go to an event, look at the different ways people hold the rifle, particularly in the sitting position, because it's surprising how many different ways that you'll see people do it. And what they're looking for is that the thing where they're as steady as can be, and any pulsing, is factored out. And that's why in FT, you'll commonly see the shooting jacket, the 10-meter style shooting jacket, to offer more rigidity to your shooting. And one of the reasons 10-meter jackets exist in FT is because somebody started wearing one, doing well with it, and like everybody else has done the same. So it's very common to see that, and you'll see someone who just begins the sport where they possibly ought not to be wearing a jacket because it's factoring out some of the skills that they've yet to sort of get finesse with. So it factors that out. But that's the way of any sport, isn't it? Someone's going to get ping golf clubs as soon as they start. But I think
I used to race karts many, many years ago, and the saying along the kart fraternity was, if you're winning and paint your seat blue, everyone will paint the seat blue.
Yeah. Well, I know they had that beautiful story about, do you remember Mark Schwartz, the American swimmer that won 7 golds, I think, back in the 70s? And the Russians queried how he did it, and he said it was because of my moustache. And so the next few meetings, all the Russians had moustaches. So there you go.
Oh dear. Well, that's been entertaining. Yeah, I enjoyed that.
Yeah. Thanks very much for coming on, Shaun.
Okay.
Yeah, we've had our allocated 30 minutes.
All right.
But really appreciate you coming on. You've really sort of like, the whole point was to try to help people understand FT a bit, and I'm pretty sure that's really helped. So really appreciate you giving us your time.
No problem. I would say that if I brushed over some things and you found people with specific questions that they wanted to ask, I'd quite happily come on and answer those too.
Brilliant.
All right.
Yes, that's great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great stuff.
I wish you good night.
Okay. Well, thanks
Bye-bye.
very much.
Okay.
Sure. Right.
Thanks, everyone.
Bugger off.